focused on superfoods. Obviously, we're making turkey koftes, which are like little patties of ground turkey with spices and herbs in, homemade flatbread, and some yogurt sort of dressing to go with it. And you're going to make yourself a wrap, basically. Here we have 125 grams of ground turkey. You can use ground chicken for this. You could use ground pork if you didn't want to use chicken or turkey, but obviously then you're off the superfoods bandwagon. And I've used turkey thigh meat, which I think is quite important. It's dark meat. It's got a way better texture when it cooks up. It's less watery. It's much tastier. I mean, there's no real need to use turkey breast. It's not healthier for you to have a breast as opposed to a leg particularly. The fat content, the difference in fat is minimal, and actually any kind of burger or patty will need a little bit of fat to keep it nice and moist when it cooks. If it's too dry, then it's going to start dry, it's going to end up even drier. So we have the 125 grams of meat there. I'm going to take a lemon and just grate, you know, like half a lemon over it. When you're grating a lemon, don't go down too far there, like I did already, into the white. That's the kind of bitter bit of the pith. You want the lemon to look like this when you've grated it, so just still pale lemon colored. Take about half that off. You're going to use the other half later. We're not going to waste it. And again, I'm going to grate most of the garlic clove in there. I'm not going to go too close because I've got gloves on. I don't want to grate the glove in as well. That would be not tasty. Pop that in there like that. I'm going to take a green onion. Green onions are quite handy to have around instead of normal onions because they go in so many things. I'm going to cut it down the middle like that and leave it intact at the root. That will help you to keep its shape when you chop it small. And then turn it around, hold it together, and go through the other side. And then hold it together and just try and chop it as small as you can all the way down. Again, it doesn't really matter what size. This is a particularly big one, but like if you have smaller ones, just use 2. If you have some herbs like mint or cilantro, you can throw that in as well. If you don't, again, I'm trying to use minimal ingredients so you guys can actually do this at home or in your dorm rooms. Okay, there's my onion. Pop that in there. Finally, we're going to take a little bit of this. If you do invest in 1 or 2 items, this one is a really good one to buy. Smoked paprika. It goes with so many things. It's just so easy. A little bit of this. It probably works out to about half a teaspoon. You can put a bit more in if you like. I'm going to take a good pinch of salt. Pop that in. Some black pepper. And then I'm simply going to go in with a fork and push it all together like this. Make sure that the spices, the paprika and the salt have mixed through enough. Ooh, we don't see that we don't want because he got a bit big, didn't get chopped up enough. And once you've got it more or less worked together, I put gloves on. If you're at home, you don't have to use gloves, but obviously it helps because your hands don't get so sticky. And I'm going to make 3 balls about equal size. So I'm kind of eyeballing it, haha, eyeball balls, like this at the moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to chill these for about half an hour while we make the other components for the dish. It's much better that they firm up a bit before you start frying them. So, once they're nice and firm, pop them on a plate. We're going to squash them down into patties when we actually cook them, but not yet. So, we want them to firm up a bit. There we go. And then just refrigerate that for about half an hour. Okay, so while the turkey's resting, I'm going to make the flatbreads. I've got 75 grams of whole wheat flour here. You can use normal plain flour again, but because it's superfood sweet, we're trying to keep it super healthy. So we have 75 grams of flour. There's a pinch of salt in there as well. And then I am going to take a teaspoon of baking powder and just pop it in like that. Whisk it all together. When that's nicely whisked together, I'm going to take a quarter of a cup of cold water. Put that in there. And it ends up being about a tablespoon of oil. So we're going to do it like that. And then I'm just going to bring it together with my hands. It gets a bit messy, but it's just easier this way. You have such small quantities when you're cooking for one. It's not really worth getting lots and lots of things dirty. You see how it's coming together but still needs a bit of help? So I'm going to put a little bit more water in. There's a little bit left in here. If it does that, you can continue to add water until it pulls it all together. But once it starts to make a ball like this, it's actually going to come together fine. It doesn't matter if it's a little dry, because when you roll it out, you don't want it too wet because it doesn't make the right shape. Okay, so when you have it in a nice ball like that, just put it on your bench and push it together a bit. We're not kneading it. It doesn't have, you know, we're not depending on gluten. It doesn't have any yeast on it. We don't need it to rise. The only thing that's going to make it rise, those lovely little bubbles come into it, is the baking powder. So that's already in there. So we're going to leave this in the shape that we want to roll it out in, just for about 10 minutes to let that relax. So now the flatbread's resting, I'm just going to make a little dressing to go in the flatbread. And I've got another clove of garlic. I've got a 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt here. You could use sour cream if you don't have Greek yogurt. I'm going to grate another kind of 1/2 clove of garlic. Pop that in there like that. And then I'm going to take that lemon we used earlier and take a little bit more of the lemon off. Pop that in a not wasteful manner. There we go. And then another pinch of salt and a grounded pepper. And that's going to be a lovely kind of citrus and garlic yogurt dressing to go with the turkey koftes in the flatbread. If you didn't have the sort of wherewithal or time to make this, you could use some hummus or tzatziki, but you know, this is kind of normally the kind of things you have at home that's just easy to make. Now I'm going to go on to make the flatbread. So, here it is. I'll put my pan on. You need a pan at a kind of medium heat. So I'm going to get it nice and hot. Take my flour shaker. Lightly dust your kind of work surface where you're going to roll it out. And again, you can see that this is going to need a little working to bring it together to get rid of those cracks on the edges. Because if it starts cracked now, then when you roll it out, those cracks are just going to look like an earthquake just about to hit the land. So make it nice and smooth at the edges if you can. Take a rolling pin, this giant rolling pin, and just start rolling it out. It'll be drier than a regular flour flatbread, because the wholemeal flour absorbs more water. But that's no big deal. Roll it out as thin as you can. Oh, it's starting to stick there. So just use your fingers and carefully pry it back like that. Reflour the surface. Flour the other side. And roll it again. Now I want this fairly large because it's going to contract slightly when I cook it. So this will be good. Take my knife, I'm going to trim off these little raggedy bits. You don't need to, I'm just being fussy. Well, in a way you do need to, because they might catch earlier than the rest of the bread is cooked. So take those off like that. Pop a little bit of olive oil in the pan. Now I can tell immediately, because that oil isn't moving around very fast when it's hit the pan, that the pan isn't hot enough. So, I'm going to get this nice and hot. I'm going to gently place the bread in, like that, and wait for it to cook. Now, while it's cooking, we can actually finish the koftes, because I have another one here, which is fabulous, and another pan, even better. So, we're going to get 2 stoves going at the same time, like a double act, because in a normal kitchen, of course, you have more than one ring anyway, so you could do this at the same time, which would be way easier. Okay. And I can easily I can hear that this is beginning to sizzle. I'm going to pour a little bit of oil into there. With this, might get rid of these crumbs, just because they don't look terribly attractive. So now this is getting hot too. You can take the koftas that have been resting in the fridge for about half an hour, so they should have firmed up slightly. So you just take them, whisk the oil around, and put one in each kind of third of the pan, so they're nicely spaced out. As soon as they hit the pan, you want to go in with the back of the spatula and gently press them like this. If you leave it too long, they'll start to cook on the underneath in that shape, and you'll never get them flat. They'll kind of be flat but round at the same time. It's weird. So press early and gently so it doesn't stick, or it does stick, and you can just do that. Okay, so that's pretty good, and you can hear that starting to sizzle now. So we're going to leave that like that, and I'm going to go back and have a check of my bread, which is starting to cook. So I'm going to flip it. Looking very nice. These are now starting to sizzle. I don't want to squash them too hard now because they tend to stick to the underneath of the spatula. So we're just going to cook these until we see them start to change colour around the outside, which means they're kind of cooking from the underneath through. I don't want to overcook them before I flip them. So you can always re-flip them, but don't flip them for the first time until you have a good crust underneath, and that goes for any meat that you cook. Otherwise, if it's sticking, it doesn't want to move. Wait till it wants to move. Otherwise, you'll ruin it. You won't have any of the kind of crust that gives it some of the flavour. You look like a little bit dry. What we're going to do is try and put a little bit of oil on the top side here because the pan is quite small. And I want it to look all burnished and lovely. If I had a pastry brush, I'd be brushing it by now, but I don't. So, okay. Take my plate. Actually wipe that. Now it should be time to turn these. You can see they're looking beautiful and crusty there. Great. Sizzling away nicely. Now because it's turkey and because it's ground meat cooks much more quickly because the heat conducts through the kind of little pieces as opposed to being one dense lump. So they're really going to take another 2 minutes. I'm going to turn them down slightly because these hobs are very hot. So I'm going to get my plate ready. The bread is cooked now. So I'm going to put the bread on the plate like that. Then, I might put this on at the end, actually. I'm going to take some mixed leaves. You can just buy a bag of mixed salad like this from the store, rather, or spinach or whatever you have. Okay. Now, these are cooked now. You can tell they're cooked because when you press them, they should bounce back in the middle. So they need about 6 minutes in total. So 3 on the first side and 2 to 3 on the second side. If you test them by looking in the middle, they won't look completely, they will look cooked, but you might think they're not because it's a darker meat than a chicken turkey breast. That's what I'm trying to say. So if they still look a little pink, it's because the meat started off quite pink, so don't be afraid of that. Okay, good. Now we're just going to place the koftes on top of here. Like that. And dress them with a bit of our lovely homemade citrus loveliness. And if you are eating this, you now pick it up, flip it in half and eat it. I'm not going to do that on camera because I don't trust that I can actually hold it together, and let alone I have a mask on. So anyway, there we have it, turkey koftes with homemade flatbread and citrus yogurt.